Merab Dvalishvili is probably my favorite champion in the UFC right now. And honestly, I think that says a lot about the current landscape of champions. It's really a sorry sight in a lot of ways. But despite that, I'm not overly excited to see him fight. I'm just not. And a lot of fans agree with me. They're not very excited for this match for a few different reasons, but a lot of them think that Sean O'Malley hardly deserves an immediate rematch, which I agree. I would have really liked to see him against Corey Sandhagen. A lot of people are disappointed that we didn't get to see that matchup. That would have been a perfect 5 round title eliminator. But at the end of the day, Merab wanted to fight. So here we are. It's just kind of how things work. Still, with that being said, I am a little worried for Merab here, which is interesting. It seems a lot of people are completely writing off Sean O'Malley. They think that the rematch is pointless because there's no reason to think it'll look any different from the first fight. And that's just not true at all. First things first, let's discuss injury. That's something Sean has been very vocal about as something that affected him. Sean suffered what's called an acetabular labral tear, which, if you don't know what a labrum is, it's basically a thick band of cartilage that acts as the ball and socket joints gasket in either your shoulder or your hip. In this case, it was Sean's hip, which makes it out to be an overuse injury. Sean is a heavy kickboxer. A lot of flashy kicks, like question mark kicks, or even most roundhouse kicks to the head, require a lot of hip mobility and they'll put a lot of torque on your labrum. And so those could potentially contribute to an injury like this, and they could also make similar movements very difficult or painful. So the question with that is how did that impact his performance the first time around? And while only Sean really knows the answer to that question, while watching the fight, you can see there's not really any moments where it seems like Sean is unable to move or kick when he needed to. And certainly, he had a more boxing heavy approach against Merab, but historically, Sean is more of a boxer than a kickboxer. And furthermore, that's not an unusual game plan for a striker versus a wrestler, especially when you have a reach advantage like Sean had and a height advantage like a Sean had. Why not just stick to boxing? This kind of highlights a common issue when it comes to assessing MMA fights. Nearly every fighter is going into their fight with some sort of injury, usually a pretty significant one. It's just part of the sport. So it's kind of hard to look back and say, oh, well, this fighter would have won or this win doesn't count because of XYZ injuries. It happens a lot. It's part of the game. And there are definitely some that are more stark than others, like Robert Whitaker's teeth in the Chimaev fight or Conor McGregor's leg in the Poirier fight. You can look at those and go, those are kind of fluky because we don't know how the fight would have played out had those injuries not occurred. But when it comes to an injury like this, it doesn't really seem like it would have been too different. It seems like what was primarily happening were a series of game plan errors because Sean was definitely moving, he was definitely kicking, he was moving fast, and generally fighting how he usually fights. And on the flip side, Merab is kind of known for fighting injured at this point. It's kind of something he brags about. He makes a lot of silly posts out of all of his injuries, from the cut on his face to the gash on his leg, and so on. So, with that being said, let's just purely look at the fighters and their skill sets. The reason that many people have already written this off as another loss for Sean O'Malley is due to how handedly he was dominated in the wrestling, which I completely understand. I get it. But aside from the technical nature of Merab's wrestling and his cardio, he simply outmuscled Sean. There are sequences where Sean would defend takedowns correctly. He would do the right things, whether it was grabbing underhooks or getting his back to the fence, and he would still get taken down, which is kind of crazy because that happens when you're wrestling up a weight class usually. And that really shouldn't be happening for the champ of a division. But Marab is probably stronger than everybody else on that roster. He's a real problem for a guy like Sean with his attributes because when you're going to be that fast and that tall, you're going to have to give up size and strength. That's just how it is. But the thing that people seem to ignore is despite all that, the labral tear, the strength difference, the cardio difference, Sean still won 2 rounds and really hurt Marab in the fifth round. And that's what's really telling here is that he hurt Merab with a teep kick and essentially exposed him for having zero teep defense. Sean lands a good teep towards the end of the round. It clearly hurts Merab, and he immediately checks the round timer. At this point, he's so hurt that he's just content to give away the round and try and survive. And despite that, despite how desperately Merab needed to defend further teeps, Sean lands 5 more. The only defense he offers is to really just tuck his elbows in down, which isn't what you need to do in that situation. Now, Merab has a good coach, and hopefully he saw this, spent a good amount of time in his training camp drilling teep defense with him. But the reality is, not a lot of people throw teeps against Merab. They're probably scared he's going to grab a leg, and so he doesn't deal with them too much in training or in fights. And this leaves a very clear game plan for Sean. Exploit that hole, stay on the outside, don't overextend like you did in the first fight where you were whiffing on right hands, allowing Merab to duck under, grab a leg. Just circle and teep. In essence, he needs to fight a relatively boring fight. And if Merab gets hurt the way he did in the 5th round, closer to the 2nd or 1st round of this fight, it's a whole different fight. He's in real trouble there. Now, Sean legitimately has one punch knockout power at 135, which is why Merab fought his fight against Sean very differently than he normally does in all of his prior fights. He circled on the outside, didn't throw right hands, and when he pressured, he would pressure with a high guard or head kicks, not with winging hooks like he typically does. Never overextending, and always letting Sean go first when it came to entering into the pocket. So, what does that leave us with? 2 people who have a game plan to circle and not overextend. It leaves us with Adesanya versus Romero, too. They're actually pretty similar if you look at them. You know, a tall, rangy striker and a jacked wrestler. And it's probably going to be a similar performance if I had to predict. So if you're betting on the under, I'd keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to pick Merab. I think he should be the favorite, as he is. But if he wasn't able to patch that teep defense, he's in real trouble. And this fight very well could not be close.